Joseph had held the child many times before, feeling his warmth against his chest through the chill of the early morning air. But that day, 40 days after his birth, something felt different. A quiet tremor of awe, perhaps, or the weight of an angelic promise he barely understood. Shortly after Jesus' birth, Joseph and Mary rented a small house not too far from the stable where Jesus was born. They decided to stay in Bethlehem for a while. There was more work to be had there than in Nazareth, and if truth be told, they weren't ready to deal with all the gossips and busybodies that awaited them in Nazareth. They took Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem to present him before the Lord as required in the law of Moses. They left Bethlehem at sunrise and arrived around 10:30 in the morning. As they entered Jerusalem, Joseph handed Jesus to Mary and pushed ahead through the crowded streets towards the temple. Mary walked beside him as they ascended the steps into the Temple Mount. She held Jesus close, her veil fluttering gently in the cool breeze. They approached one of the priests to present Jesus to the Lord, as the law had commanded, and to offer the sacrifice required for Mary's purification, 2 doves, since they could not afford a lamb. Joseph felt a bit embarrassed, having once imagined himself to be able to provide more, and while he was making a living for the small family, money was tight. The temple courts were alive with noise, merchants calling out, families moving through the gates, priests chanting their prayers. Amid all these voices, Joseph noticed an elderly man standing still as cedar, waiting. His eyes, clear and searching the crowd, fell upon Jesus, and he gasped in alarm as though the Holy Spirit himself had whispered to him. He approached Joseph and Mary, hands trembling yet steady in purpose, and he reached for Jesus. "My name is Simeon," he said. May I hold him?" he asked. Mary looked at Joseph. He saw no reason to refuse. Something about the man stirred reverence in him, as if he carried the wisdom gained from many years of listening to God. Mary placed Jesus in Simeon's arms. The moment the child rested against him, the old man lifted his face toward heaven, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "Sovereign Lord," he said, breaking into joy, "you have fulfilled your promise. My eyes have seen your salvation prepared for all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." Mary and Joseph exchanged glances, half wonder, half bewilderment. How could this stranger know, they thought? And yet it felt less like his words revealed anything new and more like they confirmed something God had whispered to both of them since before Jesus was born. Then Simeon turned to his gaze to Mary. His words were gentle, but heavy with meaning. "This child," he said softly, "is appointed for the rise and fall of many in Israel, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." Simeon handed Jesus back to Mary. Mary held Jesus tighter, her face serious and determined. She had borne the burden of mystery since Gabriel's first greeting. She would carry this mystery as well. As they started to leave, another figure approached, an old woman, frail and slight, but with eyes alive like sparks in a flame, Anna, the prophetess. They had heard her name before, whispered by those who admired her devotion and by those who thought she was a little batty. She had lived in the temple courts, worshiping day and night, fasting and praying longer than Mary and Joseph's combined ages. The moment she saw Jesus, her face lit up with recognition. She moved toward the family, hands raised in praise. Mary took a cautious step backwards. "Oh, blessed child," she whispered, "Redeemer, consolation of Jerusalem." Then louder, her voice carrying like the blast of a triumphal trumpet, she began speaking to all who were near, proclaiming that God had begun his promised redemption. People stopped to listen. Some stared, some scoffed, but Anna's joy did not waver. She had waited a lifetime for this moment. Mary stood quietly beside Joseph, the child nestled against her shoulder. He wrapped his cloak around the two of them. feeling a strange mixture of protectiveness and surrender. For though he was guardian to his family, he understood now more than ever that the child was not truly theirs to protect, but God's to reveal. Joseph and Mary finished their offerings and descended the temple steps. The sun had begun its slow arc westward, casting long shadows across the courtyards. But there was no shadow within them, only wonder. God had allowed them, simple as they were, to carry the one awaited by the prophets, seen by Simeon, and proclaimed by Anna. As they stepped back into the winding streets of Jerusalem, Joseph tightened his arm around Mary and whispered, "Hashem is with us." Mary smiled, holding Jesus close. He always has been. And with that, they began their quiet journey back toward Bethlehem. Several months passed. Joseph and Mary settled into a quiet yet busy life in Bethlehem. Joseph was finding steady work, and Mary was working hard to build a good home for the family. Not an easy task with a toddler. No one warned me how quickly little feet learn to wander, Mary thought to herself, as she quickly moved Jesus away from the cooking fire in the kitchen for the third time. At 18 months, Jesus moved with the determination of a boy twice his size, always toddling towards something, always reaching for the world with curious hands. Mary spent her days close behind him, laughing, guiding, sometimes rescuing him from small dangers he did not yet understand. This morning began like most in Nazareth. The air was cool, carrying the scent of olive wood fires rising from the neighboring homes. The sun had just begun to spill into the courtyard. Jesus, wriggling from Mary's arms, was eager to explore. He spotted a small clay cup Joseph had made, his newest prize, and snatched it up with a triumphant giggle, holding it as though it were a treasure from a king's table. Then, with staggering steps, he marched across the courtyard, his curls bouncing with every wobble. Joseph rose from the table. "I'm working in Jerusalem today," he said. "I'll be home late." Jesus followed after Joseph as he stepped down the stairs and onto the street. "Slowly, my little one," Mary warned, following after Jesus. "You must go gently." The day progressed like most days. Mary performed her household chores, all the while keeping tabs on Jesus. As the sun began to set, Joseph entered the house. Jesus tottered toward him with delightful laughter, arms raised, Joseph's cup still in his hand. Joseph swept him up, lifting him high overhead until Jesus squealed with joy. The family sat down to eat. After the blessing, Joseph said to Mary, "You would not believe what I saw today." About a mile outside of Jerusalem on the road home, I saw an amber cloud shimmering in the sun. Then shapes began to form within it. Tall camels moving in a measured, swaying rhythm, their long shadows stretching ahead of them. These were not the thin, burden-worn animals of common caravans, but finely kept beasts, draped in embroidered blankets and tasseled harnesses that flashed with bits of gold and bronze. At their head were 6, perhaps 10 dignitaries, foreigners unmistakably. They were wearing long robes, layered and dyed in deep Eastern colors, indigo, crimson, saffron. Their head clothes were bound with cords and ornaments that caught the light. Their posture was upright and practiced. Men accustomed to command and to long journeys. They spoke quietly to one another in a language neither I nor those with me could understand. Behind them came servants, dozens of them, walking with practiced steps, riding smaller pack animals. They guided the camels laden with chests, scroll cases, water skins, and carefully wrapped bundles. The chests looked heavy and their edges reinforced with metal. Something valuable must lie inside, judging by the attentive way the servants watched them. The caravan moved with a quiet dignity, no shouting, no rushing. It wasn't like Herod's caravan or one of the Romans. This caravan moved with an air of purpose that set it apart from the noisy merchant groups that usually crowded the roads. The Parthian Empire emerged in the 3rd century BC, and by the time Jesus was born, had become one of the great powers of the ancient world. By the 1st century BC, Parthia had become a formidable empire stretching from the Euphrates River in the west to India's borders in the east, controlling key parts of the Silk Road. As the Parthian Empire expanded westward, it inevitably collided with the rising might of Rome. Their first major clash came in 53 BC at the Battle of Carrhae, where a Parthian cavalry force destroyed a Roman army led by Crassus. This humiliating defeat stunned Rome and established Parthia as its most serious rival in the east. Over the next century, Rome and Parthia engaged in a long series of conflicts. Neither side could decisively conquer the other, resulting in a tense balance of power. Parthia was one of the few states Rome treated as a diplomatic equal. Roman authors often portrayed Parthia as exotic, wealthy, and dangerous, a land filled with horsemen and noble houses and ancient traditions. About 2 years before Jesus was born, King Phraates IV of Parthia was assassinated by his wife and son Phraates V. He and his mother, Musa, jointly ruled until shortly after Jesus' birth. One night around midnight in the early fall, one of Phraates' Magi, an astrologer who studied the stars for signs and omens, noticed a new star in the sky. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Gaspar wrote in his log, "It began as all nights did in our city, warm desert air drifting through the high windows of my observatory, the smell of incense rising from the courtyard below, and the quiet rustle of parchment as I record the slow turning of the sky." We Magi were trained to watch for patterns, the march of planets, the shifting of constellations, the rare conjunctions that whispered of kings rising and empires falling. The heavens spoke, if only one learned to listen. But that night, the sky did not whisper, it proclaimed. I noticed it just after the moon dipped beneath the horizon, a point of radiance, no more than radiance, something like a shard of pure light set against the silky black sky. At first I thought my eyes were weary and strained from hours of calculation, but when I blinked, it grew clearer, steadier, different from any star I had ever catalogued in decades of watching. I called to my fellow scholars, my voice unsteady. Hey, you must see this. They joined me on the rooftop. Old Nafur, whose hands shook from age, squinted upward. Young Arioch, who inhaled sharply. None of us spoke for several minutes as the light washed over us. It moves, Arioch finally whispered. He was right. Not wandering like a planet, not flickering like a star caught in the desert wind. It carried purpose, direction, as though it had been set on a path. We scrambled to our charts, our ancient writings. We turned pages worn soft by the hands of our teachers and their teachers before them. Then I found it, an old prophecy from Jewish sages. A prophecy we had studied but never understood. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. Israel, Judea, the land west of our borders? A king unlike all others? As the night deepened, the star brightened. It cast a pale glow upon the stones of the observatory, a glow that felt alive, almost knowing. I felt it stirring something in me, a trembling mixture of joy and fear. What do you think it means? Arioch asked. I swallowed before answering. It means, I said softly, that the heavens declare the birth of a great king, not one born of might, but of promise. The others whispered among themselves, excitement rising like a tide, yet I remained still, staring upward. For in that moment I knew that the star was a summons, not only to observe, but to seek. We must follow it, I said. The others fell silent. Nafur's eyes met mine, full of understanding. Across the desert? Into Roman lands? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. If the heavens have revealed the birth of this king, then it is our honor, our duty to find him." The star pulsed faintly, as if in agreement. The next day, Gaspar and the other Magi revealed their discovery of the new star to the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "I believe the star is an omen, the fulfillment of an ancient Jewish prophecy. We must honor this king." King Phreades listened with great intent. Perhaps this new king would be a good ally against the Romans one day, he thought to himself. "I agree," said Phreades to the Magi. Arash, the captain of the king's guard, stepped in to the throne room from his position behind the king's throne. "Your Majesty, send runners to all the satraps in the eastern provinces. Inform them that they have 4 months to send tributes of gold, silver, silk, and fine wool, saffron, spices, frankincense, and myrrh. In 6 months we shall send emissaries to deliver our gifts to this new king. You Magi will accompany the caravan to ensure they are able to find him when they arrive in Judea," the king said to Gaspar. The months went by quickly, but not quick enough for Gaspar. The night before the caravan departed for Judea, Gaspar wrote, "We've spent 6 months in preparation. Servants gathered tents, water skins, and bundles of stores. Camels were made ready. Gifts were chosen with reverence. Gold for royalty, frankincense for divinity, myrrh for what my heart yet did not understand." Before dawn, Gaspar climbed once more onto the rooftop. The star still shone, unwavering, waiting above the western horizon. He closed his eyes and felt the cool breath of the night brush against his face. "Child of promise," he whispered to the darkness, "we are coming." And with the rising sun, the caravan began to assemble. The long journey stretched before them like a scroll waiting to be written, but the star would guide them through desert lands and across borders. 4 months later, the caravan entered Judea. "We cannot find the star," Gaspar told the king's emissary. "Let us go to Jerusalem and speak with Herod. Perhaps he can tell us about this new king." The caravan turned northwest from the last position they had seen the star. Their presence in Judea had not gone unnoticed. By the time the caravan was a mile outside the city gate, the road was lined with people wanting to get a glimpse of these kings from the east. The Roman soldiers who patrolled the roads were clearly uncomfortable. Herod and some of the ruling Sadducees in the temple greeted the entourage at Herod's palace. The emissary ignored Herod's platitudes and feigned attempt to welcome the Parthians. There was no love lost between Herod and Parthia. "Where is the one who has been born king of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem's leaders with him. "Surely you know of this king?" the emissary asked. "One of your ancient prophets, Moses, wrote about it in your sacred writings. A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel." A perplexed Herod looked at the scribes and Pharisees, who squirmed uneasily as they stared at the Parthian emissary in unbelief. "Emissary, it is late and I have no answer for you," Herod said. "Let me consult my advisors, and we will help you find this king. Please, your grace and his counselors may stay in my palace tonight. Your camels and servants may stay in my barns, and my servants will attend them." Herod offered to set a guard around the caravan's treasures, but the Parthians did not trust Herod. They saw him as a Roman lackey who only was concerned with his own self-interest. "Thank you. We have our own guard." In 40 BC, the Parthians invaded Judea. They drove the Romans out of Jerusalem and installed Herod's rival, Antigonus II, as king of Judea. Herod fled to Rome to avoid capture and to seek help from the Romans. 3 years later, Mark Antony's Roman army pushed the Parthians back to the Euphrates and captured Antigonus. They executed him and installed Herod as king of Judea. An uneasy truce existed between Parthia and Rome ever since. Herod, paranoid and insecure, always saw the Parthians as the enemy on his doorstep. Now they bring word of a new king born right in Judea? What greater threat could there be to his crown? "Bring Annas and the other priests to me in the morning," Herod said to his courier. In the morning, Annas and a handful of scribes and priests appeared before Herod. Annas was a young rising star among the Sadducees. Herod saw a potential ally in him. "Where do the prophets say the Messiah is to be born?" Herod asked. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." "Do you believe this?" Herod asked. "It doesn't matter," replied Annas. "Many of the people do. Do you remember the rumors a couple of years ago that claimed the Messiah had been born? A bunch of low-life shepherds and that crazy old man and woman, Simeon and Anna? That was almost 2 years ago, and people are still talking about it." Herod started to slowly stroke his beard. "You may go," said Herod. Late that afternoon, Herod called for the Parthian emissary and his entourage of Magi. "The prophets say the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. Go and search for the child. When you find him, please come and tell me so that I can go and worship him too." The Parthians loaded up their camels and left Jerusalem and rode toward Bethlehem. About 2 miles outside the city, the star reappeared. "Look," cried Gaspar, "the star, the star!" They were all glad to see the star. As before, it moved in the night sky, and they followed it. It settled right above a little house near the market square in the town of Bethlehem. About sunrise, Joseph got up and prepared for the day. He was nearly finished with the job in Jerusalem. If he finished today, he would bring home enough money to buy groceries and the supplies he needed for his carpentry shop. He was eager to get on the road. Mary was busy in the kitchen, getting a fire started. She was making loaves of bread of ground barley and olive oil. Movement and faint sounds in the front of the house caught Joseph's attention. He opened the door, and what he saw filled him with terror. "Mary, Mary," he whispered loudly. The caravan he had seen a couple of days before was in the market square, right in front of their house. The high officials were at the front, and behind them were soldiers, courtiers, and servants holding crates and jars. Dozens of servants watched over the camels and donkeys in the very back. They all looked at Joseph as if he should know why they were there. Mary cautiously stepped through the door, Jesus in her arms, her eyes wide with wonder. As soon as they saw Jesus, the emissary and the Magi knelt in reverence. They were quickly followed by all the soldiers and servants. The camel handlers forced the camels to their knees. "We have come to worship him who is born King of the Jews," said the emissary. All day long they paid homage to the Christ child. Jesus wasn't interested in the gold. He just wanted to play with the crate that it came in. The Parthians threw a great feast for the family. Their neighbors, too terrified to step out of their doors, wondered what this could mean. Hannah and Levi, a young couple close in age to Mary and Joseph, looked out their window quizzically, holding their newborn son, Ethan. The festivities went into the evening. Just before the sun started to go down, the Parthians packed up and left. That night, as they camped outside Bethlehem, an angel warned the Magi not to return to Herod. They rose before dawn and returned to Parthia by another route. That same night, an angel had appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." Joseph woke up Mary. They quickly packed, taking a small chest of gold with them, and they left in the middle of the night for Egypt. 2 days had passed since Herod sent the Parthians to Bethlehem. "They tricked me. They have no intention of telling me where the child is," he thought to himself. Herod was furious. "Marcellus!" The captain of his guard responded, "Yes, your majesty. Gather 12 of your soldiers. I have a job for you in Bethlehem." 750 years before Jesus was born, Isaiah the prophet wrote, "Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took our pain and bore our sufferings, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our own transgressions. He was crushed for our own iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 6. As we follow Jesus' life through the Christmas story, we see that even before he started his public ministry, before the stories of miracles and clashes with religious leaders and political authorities, the world was already against him. Rejected by his community, now hunted by a murderous king, Jesus depends on his earthly parents to keep him safe until the day the Spirit of God calls him. About 4 years after the Holy Family fled to Egypt, Herod the Great died. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Herod's son Archelaus now ruled Judea, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee and returned to Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. Amen.